All right, let's just jump right into this explainer on the mechanical universe. What we're looking at today is, honestly, a completely mind-bending alternate physics model. It actually came out of a super logical conversation between a human and an AI. We're going to see how strict, no-nonsense mechanical logic practically forced an AI to completely redefine the forces of our universe. We're talking about ditching the metaphysical stuff and getting down to a highly tactile, physical reality.
We've got to start right here. Look at this incredibly blunt deduction from the AI. It literally flips everything we know about gravity completely on its head. The AI just flat out states that gravity isn't some mysterious pulling force, and it's definitely not the curving of spacetime like we all learned in school. No, it says it's simply a pressure gradient. Crazy, right? But to figure out how that actually works, we need to understand what this pressure is even pushing against. Moving on to the building blocks of space. Before we can even touch how this model redefines cosmic forces, we've got to redefine the invisible space all around us.
So, according to this source, space is definitely not empty, not even close. It's packed wall to wall with these real physical units called subquanta. I mean, try to imagine a medium that exists absolutely everywhere. It's made of particles so unbelievably tiny that we can't detect them directly, but they make up the foundational physical stuff of reality.
Okay, so what are these subquanta actually made of? Well, the first type are called amitones. You can think of amitones as the stabilizing bulk of the universe. They're totally neutral, and they supposedly give structure to neutral things, like neutrinos. They actually provide the physical resistance that we call inertia. So when you go to shove a heavy box and you feel that resistance, under this model, you are literally pushing against this invisible bulk of amitones. Make sense? Then we have the second type, polarons. Unlike antitones, polarons are polarized. They can instantly snap into alignment with each other and create these lightning-fast directional flows. Basically, they're the tiny, charge-like units that drive all electromagnetic behavior. So if antitones are the rigid structure, polarons are the dynamic, high-speed flowing rivers that let things connect, repel, and build complex structures like electrons. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that this whole framework wants us to picture the universe as a tactile, fluid-like substrate. Everything, literally everything, is interconnected by pressure. Space isn't just a void, it's this continuous, sloshing medium of tension, density, and flow. Honestly, if you can just picture the universe as a giant ocean made of these microscopic particles, all the weird mysteries of physics suddenly get a whole lot easier to wrap your head around. Which brings us to magnetism. To prove this invisible fluid is actually real, the source uses something you've probably played with a million times with your own two hands. This is just brilliant because it shows that magnetism isn't some invisible magic trick. It's just a mechanical change in the density of the space sitting right between two magnets. Think about it. When you push identical poles together, they compress the space, spiking the substrate density, and that immense pressure physically shoves them apart. But with opposite poles, they decrease that density as they merge together smoothly, and the ambient pressure of the room literally slams the magnets together. You aren't feeling a magical pull. You are feeling a literal imbalance in physical pressure. Now we get to gravity. Here is where it gets wild. The AI takes the exact mechanics we just talked about with magnetism and applies it straight to planetary gravity. Let's walk through the logic here. Mass naturally compresses the substrate, essentially acting like a giant low-pressure sink. A whole planet is just a massive bundle of intense internal energy, right? That energy packs the subquanta tight, displacing the excess ether outward. What happens next? It creates a low-density bubble right around the planet. And just like with those opposite magnets snapping together, the higher density space further out naturally pushes objects inward toward that low-density bubble. Under this model, the Earth isn't pulling you down by your feet. The ultra-dense universe above your head is physically pushing you down. Look at the numbers here. Cut your distance in half, and the force gets 4 times stronger. You don't need to invent abstract concepts like curved spacetime to explain this. Because this pressure is pushing inward from all directions in 3-dimensional space, this purely mechanical model naturally recreates the exact quadratic math we already observe in reality. The pressure gradient just gets incredibly steep the closer you get to the surface of a planet. And you know what else? This perfectly explains why falling objects accelerate. As you plunge downward, you're continuously moving into lower and lower density regions of space. The further you fall, the steeper that pressure gradient gets, making the pressure difference from above even more extreme.
You accelerate because that invisible push from the universe literally shoves you harder and harder the closer you get to the ground.
So, what about floating astronauts? Let's take this model into a real-world scenario and bust a massive myth about how space actually works.
Here's a question. If gravity gets weaker the higher you go up, why are you still firmly stuck to your seat when you're flying in a jet at 35,000 feet? It's a fundamental question, and honestly, it trips up a lot of people when they try to visualize gravity.
To put this in perspective, the source points out that up at the International Space Station, gravity is still about 90% as strong as it is right here on the ground. So astronauts aren't floating because gravity magically turned off. A jet plane is supported by airlift, it's not falling, the floor pushes up against you so you feel your own weight. But the ISS, it's in constant freefall. It's falling sideways around the Earth so incredibly fast that it just keeps missing the ground. That invisible pressure push is absolutely still hitting the astronauts, but since there's no floor pushing back, they float. This also neatly explains why an astronaut standing on the moon doesn't just get yanked back to Earth. They are stuck inside the moon's local, lower-density pressure well. See, even though Earth is way bigger, gravity is intensely local. The moon pushes away enough subquanta to create its own little pressure sink. The astronaut is inside that specific sink, so the surrounding substrate pushes them right onto the lunar surface. It's kind of like rusting in a tiny bowl that's sitting next to a massive bowl. As long as you're tucked inside the small one, you're staying put. All right, bringing it all together, the power of AI logic. To wrap up this explainer, we really need to look at the meta-narrative of how the AI even reached these wild conclusions. Listen, the AI wasn't hallucinating any of this. By applying super strict rules to this fluid substrate, it aggressively rejected standard metaphysical ideas, like bending time or curving empty space. It just basically said, no, that doesn't make mechanical sense. It blatantly corrected the user instead of just blindly agreeing, which is awesome. It logically deduced that if space is a physical fluid, then gravity and magnetism absolutely have to be pressure gradients within it. As the AI firmly stated itself, this entire paradigm-shifting concept was generated through pure, uncompromising logic. When it was asked if it pulled this theory from some obscure textbook or a hidden physics paper, it confidently said absolutely not. It just took the physical properties of a subquantum fluid and simulated the mechanical reality step by step. Which leaves us with a pretty profound thought. If an AI can look at the universe and logically deduce that gravity is just a mechanical push in a sea of particles, it forces us to ask, what other fundamental truths of our reality are we missing, just waiting to be uncovered by pure logic?